Have you ever been kept awake by a dripping faucet? It's a sound so insignificant, so quiet, that during the day you wouldn't even notice it, but at 3 a.m., in the total silence of your home, it transforms. That gentle plink, plink, plink becomes a maddening metronome, counting down the seconds of your stolen sleep. It's no longer just water hitting ceramic, it's a tiny, relentless assault on your sanity. Each drop feels louder than the last, drilling its way past your ears and directly into your consciousness until you do almost anything to make it stop. Why? Why does a sound with virtually 0 decibels of power hold such psychological sway over us? It isn't about volume. It's about something far stranger, something happening deep within the architecture of our own minds. The truth is, our relationship with sound is not a passive recording of the world around us. It's an active and often deeply flawed interpretation. Our brain is constantly filtering, amplifying, and sometimes making catastrophic errors in judgment, turning the mundane into the menacing. This is a journey into the glitches of our own auditory system, the hidden tripwires in our brains, where normal, everyday sounds become secret instruments of psychological torture. We're going to explore why the sound of someone chewing can ignite a primal rage, how frequencies you can't even hear might be filling you with a sense of dread, and why the quiet of your own home can sometimes convince you that you're not really alone, because the line between sound and sanity is far thinner and far more terrifying than you think. To understand the first glitch, we need to look at a condition that sounds made up, but is devastatingly real for millions of people: misophonia, which literally translates to hatred of sound. But this isn't a simple dislike. It's not the same as cringing at nails on a chalkboard. Misophonia is a neurological disorder where specific, ordinary sounds, often the small, wet, organic sounds made by other people, like chewing, breathing, sniffing, or tapping, trigger an immediate and extreme emotional response. It isn't annoyance, it's a sudden flood of rage, panic, disgust, and a desperate, overwhelming urge to flee. For someone with misophonia, sitting at a family dinner can feel like being in a war zone. The sound of a loved one chewing their food isn't just impolite, it's processed by the brain as a violent personal attack. So what's going on here? Scientists have discovered it's not a problem with the ears, but a traffic jam in the brain. Using fMRI scans, researchers found that in people with misophonia, trigger sounds cause a hyperactivation in a part of the brain called the anterior insular cortex, or AIC. The AIC is a critical hub that links our senses to our emotions and helps us decide what's important. In most people, the sound of chewing is correctly flagged as unimportant background noise, but in a misophonic brain, the AIC goes haywire. It misinterprets that same sound as something deeply salient and threatening, like an alarm bell signaling danger. Essentially, their brain's salience filter is broken. It takes a perfectly normal, harmless input and attaches it directly to the fight-or-flight system. This is why the reaction is so visceral and feels so uncontrollable. The sufferer isn't choosing to be angry. Their brain has been hijacked by a faulty connection that screams, "Threat!" in response to the sound of someone sipping their tea. It's a profound and isolating glitch, where the most common sounds of human existence become a source of secret, unbearable torment. But what about the sounds that don't trigger our emotions, but seem to generate them out of thin air? What about the sounds you can't even consciously hear? This brings us to a far more phantom-like phenomenon: low-frequency noise, or infrasound. These are sounds pitched below the 20 Hz threshold of human hearing. You can't perceive them as a tone or a note, but your body can. They manifest not as sound, but as a physical sensationa, subtle pressure, a strange vibration in your chest, a feeling of deep unease you can't quite explain. This is the invisible force behind some of the world's most enduring mysteries. For decades, residents in places like Taos, New Mexico, and Bristol, England, have reported being tormented by a persistent, low-level hum. While some can hear it, many only feel it. They report headaches, sleeplessness, anxiety, and a constant sense of dread, all with no obvious source. This isn't mass hysteria. Science has shown that exposure to specific low frequencies can induce these exact feelings. Infrasound can vibrate our internal organs and, most bizarrely, our eyeballs. At just the right frequency, around 19 Hz, the human eye will start to resonate, potentially causing smudges or gray blobs to appear in our peripheral vision. You see something that isn't there, simply because your body is being physically manipulated by an invisible wave of sound. The most famous case of this ghost frequency comes from British engineer Vic Tandy. In the 1990s, while working in a laboratory rumored to be haunted, he began experiencing classic paranormal phenomena, a pervasive feeling of being watched, a cold dread, and even seeing a gray apparition out of the corner of his eye. Being a man of science, he searched for a rational explanation. One day, while working with a fencing foil clamped in a vise, he noticed the blade was vibrating silently but intensely. He traced the source to a new, quiet fan in the room. The fan was emitting a standing sound wave at a frequency of 18.9, 8 Hz, almost exactly the resonant frequency of the human eye. The ghost in his lab wasn't a spirit, it was a sound he couldn't hear. The haunting was a physical byproduct of infrasound, proving that a room doesn't need to be haunted to make you feel like you're losing your mind. An everyday object can do it for you. From the physical to the psychological, our final glitch is perhaps the most intimate and unsettling of all. It happens when the sound isn't coming from a trigger or a hidden frequency, but from the quiet itself. This is the world of auditory pareidolia, the brain's deep, primal instinct to project meaningful patterns onto random noise. It's the ghost in our own cognitive machine. This is why you hear a faint voice in the hum of an air conditioner, a scream in a howling gust of wind, or distinct footsteps in the ambiguous creaks of an old house settling at night. This isn't a sign of madness. It's a sign of a brain working exactly as it was designed to. Evolutionarily, our survival depended on our ability to detect other living things. The brain developed a hypersensitive pattern recognition system, one biased heavily towards finding agents other humans, predators, or prey. In the ancient wilderness, the cost of mistaking the rustle of leaves for a predator was low, but the cost of mistaking a predator for the rustle of leaves was fatal. So, our brains adopted a better safe than sorry protocol. It assumes a pattern first and asks questions later. But this ancient survival software runs on the hardware of the modern world, and it can be terrifying. When you're alone, tired, or already anxious, this system goes into overdrive. The rational part of your brain may know you're safe, but the ancient paranoid part is desperately scanning the silence for data. It takes the meaningless noise of plumbing, of wood contracting, of static from an unplugged speaker, and it weaves a narrative. That random clank from the kitchen isn't just a pipe, it's a dropped utensil. That whisper of wind isn't just air, it's a voice. Your own mind, in an attempt to protect you, begins to populate the silence with phantoms of its own creation. It's the ultimate psychological betrayal when you can no longer trust that what you are hearing is actually there. So, we see that the symphony of our daily lives is played on a very strange instrument, the human brain. From the neurological short circuit of misophonia that turns a loved one's chewing into a declaration of war, to the invisible frequencies of infrasound that can physically generate a feeling of terror, to the ghost-hunting mechanism of pareidolia that makes our own mind populate the silence, it becomes clear that our sense of hearing is anything but simple. It is not a pristine window onto reality. It is a complex, biased, and deeply personal interpretation, sculpted by millions of years of evolution, individual biology, and the haunting echo of our own psychology. The sounds themselves are often innocent, a drip of water, a low hum, the sighing of the wind. They are merely vibrations traveling through the air. The madness, the fear, and the rage they can inspire are not inherent in the waves themselves. They are born in the space between the eardrum and the mind, in the translation from physical vibration to conscious experience. The line between what is real and what is perceived is a fragile one, and sometimes, all it takes is the right sound at the wrong time to make it disappear completely. The next time you find yourself irritated by a persistent noise or unnerved by a strange sound in the quiet of the night, take a moment. Don't just dismiss it. Ask yourself, what is really happening here? Is it the sound itself? Or is it a ghost in your own machine, an ancient wire being tripped, a secret glitch in your perception reminding you that the most unsettling sounds are often the ones we create ourselves?